What's up everybody out there? Welcome back to yet another addictive fishing tutorial. My name's Jordan Knigge, and today I'm telling you guys 3 of my very favorite ways to target winter steelhead. So if you guys want to learn more about how to catch these fish, stay tuned, it's coming at you right now. All right, first things first, I'm going to talk about 3 of my very favorite and my easiest things to show people how to use that I like to take out to use for winter steelhead. One's a jig, either AE worm or a jig, one's going to be a bead, and one's going to be a spinner. So I'm going to show you how I set up each one of those presentations. I'm going to show you what rod I'm using, then I'm going to actually take you into the water and show you how to effectively use all 3 of those presentations so that you can go out and catch more fish every time you hit the river. So the first one I'm going to start with is the easiest one to fish, and that's the jig setup. So what I got here, I got a 9.9 X series Okuma rod. Anything over 9 foot's gonna work for this. Any type of rod, any model of any brand works really well, as long as it's long enough to fish this bobber presentation. So this is a 9'9" rod. This has a 50-pound braided line on it, and that's a tough line. I like to have that 50 pounds so it floats better, so I can mend my line, like I'll show you here in just a minute. I have a C40 Kaimar reel on here. Anything over about a 3000 series or a 30 series reel will work just fine, just so you can have quite a bit of line on there with that big 50-pound test. And then I have a bumper of fluorocarbon line that I tie on with a blood knot. You see where these 2 knots join right here. If you guys want to learn more about how to tie those blood knots and those different uni knots that I have on each one of these rods, you're going to go on and check out some of our other tutorials on addictive fishing where we actually show you guys how to do that. So I have a slide bobber here up to my bobber stop. I have that little red tag there. You can use the thread bobber stops as well, but these little red ones work really good. They're just a rubber stop that goes on your line. I have a 1/2 ounce float. Here I've attached 4 number 7 split shot. So I got those big ones on there. That's gonna keep me down. I can add a 5th or a 6th. That's just an easy way to not have to use an inline weight. And I've been fishing with this all day, so I'm gonna crimp those down. But you crimp each one of them on your line. And this bumper line is a 20-pound fluorocarbon, 15 to 20. What I have after that is just a barrel swivel, 12-pound leader, all the way down to my worm. And you can use any sort of these addicted worms that we have. Mad River makes these. Mad River makes some awesome worms, but this is Miss America. This one is Chrome Candy. This is the limited edition worm. But some of my favorites are the Red Haze, the Brooks, and that Miss America is one of my absolute favorites. So those all work really good. This is just an old school, Mad River worm here, just pink pearl, white tail. And I can either add one of these Sink It series jigs to the end of my line. I tie just a normal fisherman's knot. This is a 12-pound leader again. You can also use the Sink It series jigs in all different kinds of colors. I kind of keep them right on my front of my coat all the time while I'm fishing. You can see I got one in my hat. That way I can quickly switch and go back and forth in between the worm and the jig presentation. The other one that's a little bit harder to fish, is why I'm going to start with this second, is the bobber and the bead. This is a really basic single bead setup that I have on here. Same thing, this is a 9.9 Okuma Guide Select, not the X series, so this is a little bit cheaper option. This has the same thing, C40 Kaimar, 50-pound test, 20-pound bumper, but the weight, where this changes a little bit, is in the weight distribution. You can either use a Dave's Tangle Free to do this, same bobber slide setup, 1/2 ounce. I have just a normal barrel swivel without the clevis taken off like I did on my other one. So I have a normal barrel swivel, I have a hole punch piece of lead, or you can use Dave's Tangle, any sort of the lead-free options. I have a 5.5 to 4 foot leader with a number 6 split shot right in the middle of it, a little bit smaller than the big ones I was using. And then I go down to my 14 mil bead. I got a little glass bead tied in here. I got this pegged with a toothpick as well, but I have a little glass bead that I tie in right above the hook so that it doesn't slide down. And then that's a number 4 mustad hook right there. So that's my main setup here. And the difference in between that and the jig is, 1, how we're gonna fish it, which you'll see here in a minute, but 2, the leader length that we use. In this faster water, I like a short leader with my jigs and stuff, but in this faster water with a bead, I want a little bit longer leader and a little bit bigger split shot so that I'm not getting snagged all day trying to drag this down the rocky river. I can use my split shot to get myself down and drag through, and the weight just keeps your presentation down and in the strike zone. So, a little more difficult method to fish. The setup is just about the same rod setup, same everything. Again, that longer rod's going to be important just for being able to fish a bobber setup and mend your line correctly. And so for the third one, I got my Okuma X 9.9 bait caster rod. This can be, you can find the same 9.3 or this 9.9 in a spinning rod as well. I got my Helios. I got 30-pound braid on here instead of the 50 because I want this line to sink, which the 30-pound sinks a little better. I have a 15-pound fluorocarbon bumper of a 6 feet down to my R&B black and silver spinner. So now I'm going to take the float setup first. I'm going to take my jig. I'm going to step into the river. I'm going to show you guys how it looks properly fished. Okay, everybody, now I'm standing in the river, and what I'm gonna first show you is the easy ways to cast these setups. I'm gonna go through some of the basics here, and then we're gonna talk about color while I'm fishing, talk about strategy, and talk about how to mend and manage your line properly. So, first things first, when you go to cast these setups, I always like to have my bail pointed right back at me. Make sure I have a nice clear area down below me. I always like to cast from my downriver side. It's best to get used to casting that form, because you're not gonna be going over your head, or getting stuck in the brush behind you, or catching the guy behind you if you point that rod tip straight downriver and then you look back to your target that you want to cast to. So I see out in front of me, I have a beautiful steelhead run here. Steelhead can sit in any kind of water, and fishing for them with the worm like this can work in just about any kind of water. I like to make my presentation go close, middle, and then far, and then I use my feet or my boat and move downriver. So I'm always going to start at the closest spot in particular to me. If I can't see the bottom right there, that's where I know those fish are going to be. So what I'm going to start with, though, is because I can tell it's only about 3 to 5 to 6 feet in this hole, I'm going to start with my bobber stop. See, it's got those little beads above it so that it doesn't slide past my bobber stop. That little red stopper is going to regulate my depth up and down. And I can pull that up and down whichever way that needs to go. I'm going to start with about a 3.5, 4 inch little tag there. I'm fishing a total of about 3 feet there. I know that's how deep it is. And a lot of people ask me, how do I know if I'm deep enough? How do I know if I'm on bottom? And you get that by searching for bottom, going slightly and moving little increments. So first cast, I'm gonna start close. So the way I can tell that this thing is fishing correctly, see how I have my line on the water, it's getting that big belly. We're gonna do what we call a mend here. I like to keep my rod at 45 degrees. I grab the line, I see that bail's open the whole time. I grab that line, I lay it over, and then I let it keep going. And to give it line, I lift up about 10 feet and I follow it down. And I lift up about 10 feet and I follow it down. And you saw how I have a pretty straight contact to that bobber. I don't have a lot of gap in between there as far as slack line on the water. And that's important, and that's all about your mend. You want to mend at the first half of your drift, and then you want to mend at 3/4. And normally you shouldn't have to mend more than that. So I'm gonna go 45 up, a little bit further out. I can tell I'm properly fishing once again, whether this is the jig or my worm, because that bobber's standing straight up and down. That's how I know I'm fishing the proper depth. I'm picking my line up off the water. My wrist is at 45, keeping the line inside off the water. I'm gonna follow that thing with my tip while giving it line. And if that bobber goes down, my first reaction should be close the bail and start reeling. That's really all you have to do. You can set a good hook set with these jigs, but it's more important to just pick up that line quickly. So now what I'm gonna do, because I fished through there twice, no bites, no bottom, I'm gonna go up about a bobber's length here, about 4 inches. Next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna cast out and I'm gonna see if I'm hitting bottom. You guys will be able to tell here if I'm hitting bottom or not. See, that thing's still straight up and down. It's going right with the current. It's not leaning downriver, it's not leaning upriver. That thing's sitting straight up and down, and I'm fishing a proper depth through that little zone. I'm gonna mend my line because I had a little belly. Rod's at 45 degrees, and I'm letting that thing go downriver. My hand's ready to go right on there. I keep lifting my tip slightly, lowering it slowly to let line out, and there we go. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go too deep, and I'm gonna show you what it looks like if your stuff is dragging and you're gonna snag. So I went up about 6 inches that time. I'm gonna go down just a smidge. Now watch the bobber when it hits the water here. Watch the direction of it when it starts to hit the bottom. See how it's starting to point downriver? And it's starting to lean into the current, and that's because that thing's hitting bottom and it's starting to pull resistance against the bobber. I'm gonna go a little even deeper for you guys so you can really see it. There we go. And when we fish these presentations with the jig, you see how it's leaning downriver. I'm obviously hitting, it's going slower than the current. There it was, it snagged up. And what I'm gonna do now that I found bottom is start coming down those small increments. So let it be known, as we said here, any color worm works. Any presentation of worm works. I like the normal 1/4 ounce with any one of the addicted worms is one of my favorite. I cut them down to that 4 inch, and fishing that, starting shallow, going deeper, and then coming back shallow is going to make you very successful with this. All right, so now that you guys know that worm and that jig setup, here's a couple shots of it actually getting put to use. Okay, so now I have the bead setup in my hands, guys, and this is gonna be completely fish different than the presentation I just showed you with the worms. This is going to be a lot different in the motion and the way you lay your line on the water, and two, what your float should look like while it's floating. So I got my normal bead setup. I'm starting with my bobber stop at about 3 feet. I'm starting with what I think the depth is. I have that split shot mid-line, and that's what I'm hoping will drag my 14 mil bead down the river. So I have that thing pegged 3 fingers above my hook so that it doesn't get caught on top of the hook and actually help those fish come unhooked. So you want to have that bead spaced out, whether it's with a toothpick or that glass bead, and automatically you see the difference here in the way this bead fishes. That bobber is slightly turned downriver the whole time, and that's because my split shot should be dragging. This is a presentation you want to see hitting bottom. The nice part about the jigs and the worms is when that bobber goes down, you can almost guarantee it's a fish unless you just move deeper. With this, a lot of times we're going to be snagging bottom and we're going to be hitting the bottom. So we have to come to terms with that and know how to adjust our bobbers just enough so that we get a good drift. We want this to go slower than the current, where the jigs we want to go the same speed. I'm going to go up about 4 inches here, start hitting bottom. I'm going to go 45 upriver again, starting close. And you can automatically see the difference there. See how much slower that bobber is going than the current. Because of that, to help resist and help that thing carry through there, I'm going to allow that little bit of a belly to go below the bobber. Mr. Popov, our good friend, calls it the candy cane. So you can watch out there. Once I start to hit bottom, that bobber is going to lean downriver just so slightly. I'm going to leave a little bit of that line on the water so that it keeps that drag, and then I'm going to give it line the same way that I did before, just by lifting my tip and going up and down. So you can automatically see just by the motion of the bobber how much different this presentation is. Works just as well. The other thing is about when that bobber goes under, whether it's bottom or a fish, we want to react the same every time. And that is a lot different than that jig presentation where we're going to be reeling fast, lifting hard, and setting the hook. It's going to be a lot different. What I always say with the beads is less is more. So that I'm drifting through there, that bobber's going down nice and easy. When it starts to hit bottom here, I'm going to show you the hook set that I want to do. Again, I have a nice little tag line on the water, giving it line by lifting my tip and lowering it. And right at the end, say that bobber goes down, all I want to do is close my bail, point my rod tip, and lift slightly while I start to reel. You don't want to jerk very hard because that bead isn't set on that hook. So that hook needs to be able to slide into the side of the fish's mouth and properly hook them. Again, 14 mil, 18 mil, 22 mil, 8 mil beads, everything works as far as a bead given the conditions. We have perfect water conditions today. I'm using this peachy pearl soft beads, hard beads, everything really works the same. You just need to be able to effectively fish them with this setup, and that does that just right. All right, so now that you guys know that setup, you know all the basics of that bead fishing, here's a few shots of this stuff really getting put to use. Now, last but not least, the spinner. This is probably my favorite setup, and it's a good one to fish last. It's what I call a cleanup rig. It's something that you want to fish after those more subtle presentations like a jig or a bead. But as you can see, I'm fishing every single one of these presentations in the same hole. So they're all good in the same kind of water. It's all about how you use them. So the spinner, very importantly, I like to really clean up the hole, and what I mean by that is I try to systematically fish the spot. I ran straight lines through this hole every single cast with my bobber setups. Now the spinner, I'm able to actually cast across and swing through every single little inch of that hole that I might have not got to hit when I was using that float setup. So what I'm gonna do, I'm always gonna cast at 90 to 45. I'm gonna start close, I'm gonna work to the middle, and then I'm gonna go far. So my first cast should always be right where I can't see bottom. I'm gonna keep my rod tip pointed right at that spinner, reeling it tight and fishing it down to the bottom. I don't wanna wait for this thing to sink, because as soon as I let it sink, bam, there it is, it's stuck on bottom. But what I do is as soon as that spinner hits the water, I engage that blade by reeling against it, get that thing fishing, and then slowly let it sink down to the bottom as it comes across 90 degrees in front of me. And once it hits that bottom, I keep following my rod tip. If I hit bottom too hard, I know it's bottom or a fish, I lift up. You see how that spinner comes to the surface. If I put it down, look, even down below me like that, it goes down and it hit the bottom. Spinner up to the surface, go tip up, spinner down, you go down. So now that I made that first cast, I'm gonna make my second cast a little bit further out in the run. Doing the same thing, rod tip pointed right at it, slow retrieval, bringing it straight back to me. And one thing I'll touch on while I'm going through this, and as swinging through here, is spinner color just is relative to the day. All spinner colors work pretty good. I like blues, I like blacks, I like yellow, I like orange. It just depends on the kind of color of the daylight you have, and then the color of the water. Sometimes I'll use a white blade, sometimes I'll use a gold blade, but it all is gonna depend. The best thing to do is have a multitude of them. Open that box when you get to the river and see which one is the most vibrant, and the one that puts off the most UV light that you can tell is gonna fish best in that sky color during that day. So now that I've talked about that, I'm gonna make my third cast a little bit further out. I'm gonna keep my rod tip pointed right at it, slowly letting it fall to the bottom. And I'm gonna swing that thing all the way across there, nice and slow. I just felt bottom, I'm gonna lift up a little higher, and I'm just gonna slowly reel just enough to feel that line thumb. Because as you guys will see here as I show you this, is that the less this spinner blade spins, the more light it puts off. So we can look out here in front of us. Look how fast that blade's spinning, and look how much light is actually coming off of it. Now if I put it upriver and I let it go and it goes slower, look at how all that flash. See how you're getting that bigger flash, that more light presentation? You're actually being able to see that spinner blade more throughout the drift than you are if it's spinning fast. So getting that little belly in your line, letting that thing sink, and letting it flutter and spin slower will always catch you more fish when you're fishing a spinner. So now that I've made those 3 casts, I'm gonna take my 2 steps and I'm going to repeat over and over again. So now that we've covered all that, Sean's gonna cut to a little B-roll of these spinners catching some fish. All right, everybody. Well, I hope some of those tips helped you guys learn and get a little bit more of a grasp on what to take to the river to try to catch winter steelhead. All these presentations work. There's no gimmicks at the store. Every single thing works as far as a jig, worm, beads, different sizes, different colors. Everything will get those fish, but being set up properly, having the right rods, and being able to effectively fish when you're out there is gonna make all the difference in the world. If you guys want to know a little bit more in depth on some of these different techniques, be sure to check out our YouTube channel and our how-tos for salmon and steelhead. We do all kinds of videos going really in depth on colors, sizes, and different presentations of these jigs, worms, and spinners on our YouTube channel. So if you guys enjoyed this video, go up here and click this link to this next one. Be sure to go down here and subscribe, turn the bell on, give this video a thumbs up, and comment below with any questions you have, and you could be the comment of the day just like this person right here. You guys stay fishy. We'll see you out there.